Oh, sorry, apologies. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rotimi Itayo, and this is the Good Morning Education Show, streaming from Lagos, Nigeria, to West Africa, to the entire world. And it's such a pleasure to be here once again. It's a rainy Monday, and it's back to school season. We would like to congratulate and wish all our educators, our students, our administrators, and regulators happy resumption for those who are resuming today or for those who are resuming this week. We believe that it will be a smooth resumption week, and we pray that you find favor, you find strength, you find protection, you find speed, you find quality in all that you represent, in all that you do. And on the Good Morning Education Show, it's such a wonderful time on the show. We love to spend time with our tribe members all over the world, wherever you are streaming from. We love you. We'd like to say thank you for your consistency. Thank you for joining us. And if this is your first time, do not hesitate to tell us your name, tell us where you're streaming from, tell us your location, and we will be glad to welcome you on board. On the Good Morning Education Show, we have a mantra. We either say it's always a great morning or it's always a great day on the Good Morning Education Show. You can catch us Mondays all through to Sundays. On Mondays to Fridays, it is 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then, of course, on Saturday, it is 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And on Sunday, it is 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's what we call the weekend special. Yesterday was a fantastic day. Today is also going to be a fantastic day. And I believe that already, without saying anything, the rain of blessings is already upon us, and also the bell of blessings upon you. So we thank you for joining us. We appreciate you, and would like to say thank you for joining the Good Morning Education Show. Right about now, expected to bring up Fee Polu. To step a bit backstage as Fee Polu takes up. Um,
Good
Hello, Fee.
morning. Yeah, I have some issues with the connection this morning, but it's good to be back. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Good Morning Education Show. This morning, it's a very rainy morning, and I think that's interfering with our connection this morning. But it's good to be back here. Did you join our show, the weekend special? Did you join us on Saturday and Sunday? If you didn't, you missed quite a lot, and you'll be doing yourself a lot of good to catch up on the replay of our Saturday and Sunday show. We had an exciting time on Sunday, particularly talking about toys and having some of our younger tribe members join us on the show. Though we didn't see their faces, but they were there. So good morning and welcome to a new week, a fresh week, a resumption week in some places. Children are going back to school, teachers are ready for them, and yeah, another academic session is starting. This is the Good Morning Education Show, and here we have discussions and analysis around education, everything and anything that has to do with education. You will find it here. Welcome to the show this morning. As is our practice, we start off with the highlights from the dailies before we go into the discussion for the day. And so we start off with the headlines from the news this morning. Our first headline, um, Taliban says Taliban says women can study at university, but classes must be segregated. Women in Afghanistan will be allowed to study in universities as the country seeks to rebuild after decades of war. But gender segregation and Islamic dress code will be mandatory. The Taliban's the Taliban's new higher education minister said on Sunday. The minister, Abdul Baki Haqqani, said the new Taliban government, named last week, will start building the country on what exists today and did not want to turn back the clock 20 years to when the movement was last in power. It's great to see that the new Taliban government is committing to the education of women, unlike what's been generally touted and expected that women may not be allowed to have an education under the new government, even though there are conditions and the conditions are not necessarily the best. But I think we will take what is available rather than having nothing at all. Medical professionals in academia don't need PhD to become VC. Prof. Ogushola, that's the ex-provost, College of Medicine, Unilag. The Prof. Ogushola said that when others are employed into a university, the entrance is by PhD. But for medical professionals, they come in with a fellowship. By the time the university has promoted you to a professor, they cannot turn around and say because they didn't accept you with a PhD, you cannot become a VC. They never had that contract with the medics. I think this is in response to, I think it's LASSO, where this conversation came up that for medical professionals who want to become VC in the universities, they must have a PhD. The argument goes back and forth, but I hope this is not the foundation for this is not the foundation for uh, struggles and tussles to come up in picking and appointing vice chancellors for universities. Okay, moving on. Medical fellowship. Yeah, this is a response to Prof. Ogushola. Medical fellowship can't substitute PhD as qualification for VC. Prof. Oshodeke, ASU president, the national president of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, Prof. Emmanuel Oshodeke, in his interview with Punch newspapers, said medical professionals in the academia cannot present medical fellowship in place of PhD as requirements for appointment as university vice chancellor. So seriously, I'm hoping that this back and forth does not become a huge issue to the appointment of vice chancellors for universities and then prolonging things and becoming much more than and becoming an issue in the universities. Welcome to the show this morning, Olushola Olumide. We're glad
Good,
to have you here.
good, good morning, good morning, good morning, Follow, and good
Good
morning to our
morning.
tribe members. Yes, I think that headline got my attention. I think in a way, we are. I think we are rumbling with that in Lasso as we speak, but I think the dust is settling down. And I think, apart from the medical profession, I think some people too in the law profession may not necessarily have a PhD. And well, for me, it isn't about the certification or the qualification, but the expertise the person can bring to bear. Be that as it may, we shouldn't rule out the issue of politics. And there are many power interplay when it comes to the choice of a vice chancellor. Normally, when the people are screened, 3 people are shortlisted, and the visitor to the school, who is the governor in the case of state institution, or for federal institution, the visitor to the school has the right. At times, the president has the right to ratify and decide this is the person I want. It could have been the third, it could have been the person in second position, or the person in first position. So a lot of power interplay comes to be when it comes to the choice of vice chancellor, which a common eye doesn't see in most cases. Thank you.
Interesting. I'm just hoping that this politics does not affect education eventually. Abia
So,
government warns against Abia government warns against iPod sit at home as students continue WASE. Uh, the Abia state government has warned against attack on students participating in the 2021 West African School Certificate Examination by hoodlums who hide under the indigenous people of Biafra to cause mayhem in the state. This is following the declaration of sit-at-home order by the secessionist group. Recall that IPOB had ordered that sit-at-home must be observed in all parts of Namdi Kanu, who is currently detained at the Department of State Services in Abuja. Um, when we talk about insecurity in the north, this is a form of insecurity in the southeastern part of Nigeria. And at this point in time, our students, our children are at risk of being, even though the IPOB agitators have said that for now they're suspending the sit-at-home call, but people, parents are not, and rightfully, they have the every reason to doubt the fact that it's safe to have their children go out. How does this affect those writing exams? Those now schools are resuming. We're in the season of schools resumption. What's your thoughts on this IPOP sit at home and insecurity generally as it
well,
affects our students?
I think for agitators, they have their reason for agitating. But however, we shouldn't take 2 steps forward and take 5 steps backward. These students, if they miss the exam, WAEC is not going to say because you are living in the southeast, that means those students, they've lost a whole year for the crime they never committed. And there is a saying in Yoruba, "Taba n sunkún, a máa ríran o." We shouldn't plunder the younger generation just because we are agitating. They should go to school. After all, you are not having problem with schools around. Private school, government school, that's not what you're having problem with. Whichever other way you can do your agitation, go ahead. But please, for the sake of tomorrow, for the sake of the life of these young people, because even if the self-determination is eventually given to you, those that are supposed to be a sort of asset to you, you've deprived them of the knowledge they need to gain to be instrumental to the development of the region. And if everybody had to run away from the region, by the time you have the so-called name you are having and you are given that independence, who are you going to rule over? So I think whoever and the people who say they are agitating, they should see that they should not just, and they should talk to their members. Don't just go on the street or rampage just because you are going to. That could be dialogue. There could be other means, but they should not tamper with the life of this younger generation. They are not the one in Abuja. They are not the one who has offended you. Why are we going to say because we are agitating, we want our voice to be heard, and because of that, students will not go to school. They should not write why. They should not write Jamb because they couldn't go out. Fear of their life. I think it is a step in the wrong direction. And then no matter what they achieve tomorrow, if you destroy the life of this younger generation, I think it's coming back to haunt them later in life. Thank you.
That is apt, and that's very correct. We need to allow these children, let them have their future, not use the present to destroy what the future can be. And for our last headline this morning, Senator Omoagege, Governor Sanwo-Olu make case for theological education. Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Ovie Omagege, and the Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, have called for enhanced theological training for church leaders for the good of society. Both leaders made the call at the 30th and 31st convocation of the West Africa Theological Seminary on Saturday, September 11th. Um, Senator Mwagege wondered why some people believe they could serve the Lord without preparation, adding that the Lord Jesus Christ himself trained his disciples for 3.5 years. What's your thought on this?
Hello.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
training or manpower development is sacrosanct to growth in any sphere. It doesn't have to be theological alone, normal secular engagement. Because ignorance is a killer. Yes. When people don't know what to do, they end up destroying a lot of things. Like Senator Moagege said, um, Jesus trained the 12. And of course, the Holy Spirit has also encouraged us to learn, to be able to divide the word of truth. And for me, it's a place in the right direction. The only thing now is that the proliferation of such theological seminaries where people bag first degree, second degree, or PhD shouldn't displace the place of God on the pulpit. As far as church is concerned, no matter how we try to marry with secular uh, society, we can't root out the impact of God, his place, as far as church is concerned. Administration is good, it won't be enough. Knowledge is good, great, having certification, great and good. But I tell you, when it comes to administering spiritual matters, the place of God, his spirit, cannot be overemphasized. So as they go to learn in schools and have certification, they should also learn to sit and learn in the presence of God and be who they ought to be. And I think education without godliness makes a man a clever devil. I'm talking of ecclesiastical setup now. Some things are condoned in the secular world that are not condoned when it comes to ecclesiastical setting. So if somebody have knowledge in the head and his heart and life is not transformed, that person will do more evil to the cause of God. Thank you very much.
That's very instructive, very instructive. And one way I look at this is, while in other professions, people go through training, go through skill training, go through academic training to be the best in their profession. If we look at theology and in its practice, it's a profession. How ready are we, or do we just hide under the banner of "I was called," "I was"? There's a divine call. These are some of the things that we really need to. These are some of the things that we really need to put into consideration and uh, well be let these things be properly legislated, so that there is a solid system that cuts across the practice of these professions. That's the end of our headlines this morning. We're going into the discussion. Before we go into the discussion, we welcome our tribe members, Sunday Olabode Oladokun. We see you, Gideon Essien. Good morning. We see you. And good morning also, Mr. Rotimi Itayo. Welcome back to the show.
I was wondering when you said good morning, as if I was the one that ushered you into the show, if you remember. So back when.
Yeah, so welcome back to this side of the show.
Okay. Good morning, Mr.
Our
Olusola.
discussion this morning.
Good morning, Project Director. You're welcome.
Our
Okay, carry
discussion
on,
this
please.
morning is so we want to cut off something, but we need to make a decision on which one to cut. Are we cutting off Jamb or are we cutting off Max? Which of them should take the knife when it comes down to it? This year particularly, we have seen all that has gone down with Jamb, with the UTME, with the UTME, and all back and forth. There was a time, yeah, the results were not as low as it was generally touted, and another time the registrar took the responsibility and said, yeah, the results really were not as good as we expected at the time. At another time, it was COVID that was the culprit for the result. At another time, it was parents that were trying to bribe the JAMB registrar. At some other time, it was this. There has been a lot that has bedeviled the UTME this year in particular. And then at the end of it all, the big reveal was done that Jamb is withdrawing and having to set the cutoff marks, and institutions will have to set this cutoff marks themselves. With all of this that has gone down, particularly this year, what should we be cutting off? Is it Jamb or is it the marks? And who do I want to start this off? I think I want Mr. Olushola Olumide to start this off for us this morning. Not sure if you can hear me. Okay, let's go to you, Mr. Itayo. What should we be cutting off?
Okay, thank you very much. Good introduction. When we look at some things, especially um, when we analyze the way you've been able to open our eyes to the conversations in the sector, we need to see ourselves as moving away from blaming things, right, to addressing issues. And JAM, for example, as an entity, has been in that spotlight. To a large extent, it now looks like we cannot articulate what exactly the crux of the issues are. And in business, right, there's something called root cause analysis. He has put cut in my mouth now. So it's like cut, camera, action, back again. There's something called root cause analysis. And when we look at some of the systemic things plaguing the entity JAM, by far extension into the education sector, we'll realize that a regulator's error becomes a regulating error. You understand? An administrating error or administrator's error becomes an administrative error. And you find that's how it begins to create so many things that we suffer today in education. So I would say on that premise that I think it's high time that we cut off JAM and not cut off marks. The cut off marks is not addressing the roots of the issue. It's not causing us to sit and face these things squarely. It's not causing us to articulate as professionals as we are. And we forget to remember that JAMB itself is a body. And the people there are offering a service, or you could say offering several services. And they are being employed. They are being paid. It's not philanthropic. It's not an NGO. It's not just an initiative, neither is Jamb just a project. Jamb can be equally said to be an organization and an enterprise. It pays its staff. It's an organ of institution. And for that level and the sensitivity of what it regulates in the nation, I think that there's no level or room of mediocrity that should be tolerated. We should not celebrate the CEO of Jamb or registrar of Jamb based on his qualification. We should celebrate the outcomes of the interaction with the organization, of interfacing with Jamb, and not just the pedigree and integrity of the CEO. It is good to have a good leader, don't get me wrong, but a leader with a bad system is equally not going to do anything. A leader with a bad system with bad outcomes is also not desirable. So let's stop brandishing an individual, and when the individual is now on fire, we'll replace with another individual. The root of the matter has still not been addressed. So it's time that we cut off for a sake Jamb and not cut off the mark. And when I say cut off Jamb, what I'm trying to say is this. You might not necessarily abolish in terms of the institution, but current practice and the model of operation can be changed. There's nothing that can be changed in the world today. So Jamb itself can change its regulatory function, its model of operation, and the dynamics of higher institution engagement and learning. And at that time, you find that if we cut off Jamb, you will begin to see other things. It's just part of the nine-head monster, the hydra-headed monster of education. And once Jamb is cut off, the other heads, we will get them out of the way. Thank you.
Wow, that's a heavy one. That's a heavy one. That axis is a heavy one because, well, before we continue, I'd like to find out from Olushola Olumide, in your opinion, what should we be cutting off, Jamb or the max?
Thank you, Fee. I want to align with the project director on what he has said. I don't know whether you observe high-tech diplomacy this year, the issue of setting cutoff mark. Normally, they will have a strategic meeting with all the institutions to determine the cutoff mark. This year, Jamb said, go back to your school and determine your cutoff mark. I tell you, that was high-level diplomacy. It has never happened before, and it was a deliberate step. In fact, I wasn't that surprised anyway, because Jamb appeared to be between the devil and the deep blue sea. Yes, they don't want their name to be mentioned. That, okay, the outcome was so bad, so they didn't perform well, and you sat down somewhere and said they should make it 150, make it 180, make it 200. Why some people are agitating that and say, how can you make cutoff mark to higher institution 150? Some people are saying 150 is too high. And our people just felt, instead of us to be the Paschal Lamb this year, let everybody to your tent, O Israel. Whatever you do is your headache. In fact, whoever gave them that idea thought it well, and know that this is Nigeria. You have to beat the nation to it this time. I don't want them to ask for your head. Let them be the one. Whatever everybody wants to do is your headache. Don't call Jamb into this matter this year. If your cutoff was 250, it was because you chose to make it 250. If 120, it's one is shouting around Jamb now and asking for the registrar's head. It was because they went ahead of the school and said, don't worry, before you crucify me this year, I will push the thing to your tent. Whatever you do is your headache. It should be, Jamb should be cut off. And like Rotimi said, the nomenclature, the systemic issue. This is Nigeria. Finfolu, we're on air. There are certain things that it is Monsino Mosikum. You can't bring them to the public. But this, in fact, these are the things going on. I had a boy last year who had 216. By the time he was going to print a result, he saw 186. Where will the boy start from? And there were people who had 174, only for them by the time they were going to print Jamb, they got 244. So I don't know. Though I know it will be a tall order because it's like, how do I put it now? Going to confront your Goliath if you tell the government to scrap Jamb. But I know something will happen that will make things to fall into the right place. Thank you.
Let me say this quickly. Sorry to cut in quickly. We need to realize, just as Olushola Olumide said, right? We want to use their own language and we want to use their own recipe. That's the safest step. You know, when you say scrap, a lot of people think surface thinking, and then they begin to agitate jobs and employment, national character, federal character, and then the powers that be. And then, of course, what you see, the truth of the matter is this. Before we get to that level, let's use their own language, which is cut off. So let's not use the word scrap. We don't want to scrap Jamb. We want to cut off Jamb. And when we say that, we need to realize that it's not just the institution that will disappear. For you to address things like Jamb as a stronghold, there are certain industries that must appear. It's not so much as to disappearing, but to appearing. And somebody might also add reappearance. Let me give an example. What Olushola Olumide said about someone checking a score, got a very high score, and then eventually saw a low score. Someone else got a low score, eventually saw an high score. You realize that the truth of the matter is, even when you want to now begin to sort those things out, you will not even find things that are seamless. It will almost be a tall order. It will almost be like you are writing another Jamb. And you know all these things as well. And when people begin to see victimization practice in the open glare, you begin to notice that like things are changing. So I think that one of the things that this would do for us to cut off Jamb is to see advocacy in the place of education. Education advocacy must become a proper industry. It's not something left to comment on the Good Morning Education Show. Neither is it left to comment on newspaper or strong written articles or in a body of Facebook group or Facebook page. We need a scenario and we need a situation that will put this same thing in the spotlight. You know, when something begins to be spoken of, you find out that the practice and the people who are the practitioner will not feel comfortable any longer. Thankfully, this is not an area where you have to physically put your face out there. Exam advocacy is a strong industry that Nigeria needs in the education sector. We need people to take those things up because the students themselves, the family themselves, might not know how to articulate, might not know how to pass their way. They will get bullied out. Imagine somebody said, I saw 144 when I got 246. The process of even getting your exact score, it will cost you a lot. And should you miss an academic year, if Jamb gets sued, the money they are returning to the federal government in billions, they need to pay people in compensation for the trauma, for the issues that they've gone through. You know, all these kind of things. And these are things that we have people who are lawyers and they are walking down the street looking for chambers to work. Whereas there are opportunities, for example, you can even start a business called student rep. And that business, you will use that to help people who have issues, squells to face or to settle with Jamb and admission and matriculation issues. And you find out that you will begin to see that the voice of the people will be heard. The system will begin to call the major stakeholders to question. We will have a more interactive Jamb. We need to cut off the current Jamb, where Jamb is seen as a closed curtain, a veil that you don't know what is happening on the inside. We should see the transparency with the setting of papers, with the question bank, with the result collation, with the result announcement, with the registration process. We should see all those things. If I pay for an exam and all I get is just a score, I don't think that is accountability enough. I don't think that is best standard. There should be transparency. I'm paying for a service. Jamb is not doing me a favor. It's a transaction. I pick the form just like any other form. I paid for the form and I did all my own side of the bargain. Then the organization is not doing their side of the bargain and we want people to smile and fold their arms and say, well, it's one of those things. It is no longer one of those things. And let me tell you this thing that we are afraid of, not talking and not speaking out, it's actually it's a scam. There's nothing to be afraid of because the truth of the matter is we're not picking issues with people. We are picking issues with systems. And the systems are actually not called to order because the people themselves, that are victims are not bringing this as feedback. We're sharing it as concern. We're sharing it in the place of gossip. We're sharing it in the place of bitterness. Bitterness has never grown an industry. Gossip has never advanced the sector. We need to be able to get to a point where we're able to say that, you know what we need to cut off. We begin to ask people. There are people like that are listening to us today. They face this. Pick an average educator. Pick an average principal. Pick an average parent. Put them in the same room. Do a survey or a blind survey. Do something out there and let people tell you their experiences. Oh, my students, we put in so much work, prep time, reading time. In fact, some students have about 3 lessons that they go to: the lesson in school, the lesson at home, and then the lesson in the neighborhood, and all because of one exam. It tells us that something is happening, that we are submitting expertise and excellence on the altar of mediocrity, and we are defending incompetence. It's not possible. We need to make these things change, right? I don't know, but I don't want it to look like maybe somebody thinks I wrote Jamb and I didn't pass. I actually wrote Jamb and I passed. I wrote it and I passed. I went to university and I'm passed. And I'm doing it for myself. I'm not a student ranting. I'm talking about someone who's really not just passionate about education, but who is pursuing development and advancement of education. There are 2 different things. You can be passionate about something and you are not in the pursuit of it. You can be passionate about something and you are not advanced in the development of what you're passionate about. So this is what we're trying to say. It is time. We need to cut off this thing. You understand? I like what Gideon Essen is saying. You know, just like we have WAEC and NECO monopoly, they should be broken. Perhaps they will. Jamb is a government organ. Yes, we need to. Because let me tell you one of the things that people need to see. Let's show them the beauty behind on the other side. Once Jamb is sorted out, guess what next will happen? NUC. The National University Commission will be sorted out. These things are parasitical. They are not advancing anything. How would you need to have over 500 million naira for you to set up a university in the 21st century? You need to have hectares, almost a village. And you expect non-government people to set up universities. It's not possible. It's not possible. What do you want to do with trees? What do you want to do with landscape? Is all university courses meant to be residential? In the world that we live in today, and then people will come and say, this is accredited, this is not accredited, just to show that they have powers, the powers that be. It's not possible. That's why we'll not hear one of the youngest professors in the world is from Africa or from Nigeria. If I thought they are Nigerians, they are not from Nigeria, meaning that they are resident in other countries that are seen the way to enable growth in education. And let's break the divide. It's high time we break the divide. Education should be treated like oil sector. It's an oil and gas phenomenon. And we need to recognize that. We need to rise above the level of the current civilization we have. And check what? It starts from regulation. Because the number 1 problem of education in Nigeria is mismanagement of education. Thank you.
Wow, it's getting very hot in here. It's getting really hot. And I think before we continue, we should just take some of the comments that we have had.
Okay.
We have had comments from Gideon from the beginning, and Ayobolanle Aino says, please, after discussing about cutoff marks for Jamb, can you help us look at universities that have a cutoff of 100 students to graduate, yet they take in 300 students at 200 level? They are now cutting them. Cutting them off from 4 million school fees, they increased to 6 million. Okay, so this looks like there's a particular school in mind here. Buhari Abisola says yes to exam advocacy. And then we have, just like WAEC and NECO, their monopoly should be broken. Perhaps the will. Jamb is a government organ. Okay. It's very obvious that one of the problems that higher education has in the country. Okay, Gideon Essen says, I think there's a big disparity in attainment. Like the SATs, each university should have their own cutoff. The results we see in Jamb is just a report card of the system of education. Absolutely. If we have a system where I agree, Buhari Abisola says, I agree with Gideon Etienne. I still don't understand why people go through the whole stress of writing Jamb, but still end up not getting admitted into a reputable university. And this is why, just like the VAT issue, if someone takes them up in court and wins, they will sit up. Well said, Mr. Rotimi. Yeah, we look forward to them actually sitting up, because this has become one of the biggest maybe businesses in the country presently. Is this jam thing? Is this exam issue? You have thousands of students, am I saying thousands, I mean millions, that write this exam from time to time. And at the end of the day, when results are released, you still have less than half of them gaining admission. If universities have their own autonomy, like as we have entrance examinations into secondary schools, into primary schools, and individual universities have their autonomy to conduct their exams, to admit their students, maybe to increase their facilities so they can take in more students. And if they cannot take in more students, maybe to fast track some of their programs, or to have other programs that have varying lengths of program. Who says that we need to stay 4 years in the university to study English language? Please, I don't understand why we need to do that. For other courses where maybe like medicine, it doesn't even have to be 6 years anyway. There's some of these things that can we have an overhaul of the entire system? But I'm taking this to this morning. Like, would autonomy, because now the big axe is on Jamb, both from the comments we're receiving from analysts, the big axe is on Jamb. If we have Jamb cut off, will universities be able to handle the autonomy on their own in setting cutoff mark, understanding that these things are also influenced by, oh, somebody knows the VP, someone knows the chancellor, somebody knows, and then yeah, now will it affect standardization? That's the question.
Thank you, Fee. If I had you, the line was breaking. Talking about if Jamb is cut off, university autonomy, how is it going to play out? Well, I will tell you that, of course, there will be teaching problems, but we'll surmount it. I think people will learn that if Jamb, the almighty Jamb, can be dealt with, they too can be dealt with. Now, Rotimi spoke about the issue of transparency, and as he was talking, what came to my mind is this. A particular state did a unified exam for nursing students, those that want to enter into school of nursing. By the time the result came out, what they put in the result is qualified, not qualified. Whether you are 10 over 100, nobody knows. They just put not qualified. You have collected money from thousands of students. They came to write the exam. All they can see on their dashboard is are not qualified. Did I score 2? Did I score 10? Can you see? See, if Jamb drowns, I tell you, many institutions will wake up. And the issue of advocacy, by the time Jamb pay damages running into billion, they don't need to tell others. They will adjust because they know that the people will not that they just know they are right. They can pursue the right to a logical conclusion and get justice. Of course, the position of the law is always not the position of justice. That's a different ball game. Different institution, yes. At the beginning, you count the cost. Do I want to go to Unilag? Do I want to go to UI or IFE? You look at the peculiarity of the school before you decide to go in there. And it also gives students multiple opportunities. You can apply to Unilag, apply to UI, apply to IFE, apply to OA. You know, by the time you apply to 6-7 schools, just like they do abroad. You go from one school to the other writing their exam, and when you qualify for one, you go. Yes, that will because institution, each institution, especially public institution, I tell you, the cabal in public institution is beyond what we can describe here. Yes. Do you want to talk about admission racketeering and what? But you don't need too many people to face the wrath of the law. Just one person will serve as deterrent to others. So there will be teaching problems, but we can surmount it. And because there is a condition precedent, I tell you, everybody will be careful going forward. And when we are writing the exam, put the thing on the board. Let everybody see. Oh, I scored 62. The cutoff was 65. You don't need to fight anybody. You know you didn't do well. Or you did well, but your doing well wasn't enough. You will go home disappointed, but peaceful. But in a case where you don't even know, only for you to hear later. You know, schools, I told you the cabal there. Why somebody is murmuring, I had 280. I was not given admission. Then beside you see somebody saying, which school? He says, so and so school. He said, my cousin entered with 230. You feel like, is it true? It is true. Fini. Those of us here and those of us, a lot of people hearing all this morning, we pass through Nigerian system. We know as it is, and it's because we have kept quiet too long, like Rotimi said. People are just taking the masses for a ride. They know nobody will challenge them. Nobody is ready to take them on, so they feel they can do and undo. Until we begin this advocacy of a thing, I think is a way to go. When people realize that if you do anything here, you will hear your name. The other time, safety chick wanted to collect a transcript, and they were trying to do hanky-panky. By the time they found themselves on Twitter, it was somebody that phoned a safety chick. So that means they could offer an excellent service before, and they chose not. But they don't want bad public image.
Paid. They are being paid. That's the problem. They are being paid. We are not, you see, we are not, see, and I like people out there to understand there's a caveat to the conversation of today. We are not this disgruntled set of people. Neither are we fame-seeking set of people to take on honorable institution and make a name out of it. Absolutely not. Speaking about this is not a branding strategy for some people might be thinking about that. It's about saying that if somebody's paying for service, it should not be victimized for the service he paid for because it is his right or it is a right. And we need to recognize that Nigerians need to begin to ask questions and demand for the right answers, right? And this is how it works. Listen, it's not about just having, you know, a lot of people have been talking, you need to have PVC. This is the PVC we are looking for, right? You see, there are many things that is low-hanging fruit. You can't deal with a Jamb, you can't deal with an NUC, low-hanging fruit. You want to not deal with the federal government. That won't work. It won't work. In fact, it's misdirected resource, the misdirected intelligence, misdirected strategy, right? This is the grassroots of what we're talking about. Grassroots is not the people in the slums. That's another misconception we're having. This is for those of us that can engage, this is grassroots, right? Think about the number of universities. We have over 150 universities in the country. Think about the number of universities that will straighten up. Look at the dynamics. When universities don't work for the students they have, I can tell you authoritatively, in the place of enrollment drive, they don't strive for students. It's a giving. You will see the level, like Molushola said, the level and the stakes will go higher. Experiential marketing will increase. Why? Because everybody realizes that, look, it's no more, university is no more like the guarantee. And this is a call to all secondary schools out there that, look, there's a big opportunity. If we're going to cut off Jamb, we're not going to cut it off by scrapping Jamb. You can cut it off by causing an industry change. I think when people begin to see that students that leave SS3 have a stopgap institution that is like a skill institution, as we spoke about on Saturday, and people now find out that there is getting more value than spending 4 years in a trapment called university, and I'm being economically viable and buoyant, and everything else is there. I'm knowledgeable, I'm sound, right? You don't need BSc to show that you need to marry. Hope you know. You don't need BSc to travel out of the country. Hope you know. You don't need
Yes.
BSc to procreate. You don't need BSc to go to heaven. So some of these things we need to demystify the miseducation that people have said to us that if you are going to have a better trajectory in life, you must spend 4 years before things start making sense. That's a big lie. In 1 year after secondary school, you should be able to become somebody that is reputable in society. Guess what? Even while you're in secondary school. So this is a wake-up call to secondary schools, because if we will cut out Jamb, we will bring to bear what has been missing. We are not talking about what is existent now. It's the things that are missing that is causing Jamb to be what it is today. When student advocates rise up, and I mean, when I say student advocate, I'm not talking about student union. Student advocates, that's the people in the business of practice of education advocacy, with the instrument of law, with the instrument of media, you will see things change. When secondary schools who are future thinking begin to set up skill institutions instead of just vocational schools, you will see things begin to change. Because at the end of the day, if Jamb can be okay with me paying a registration fee of maybe 3,000 or 5,000, and they don't mind whatever my fate is, I would rather pay 5,000 naira to a place that will enhance me within a period of 12 calendar months. And I'll call it SS4 instead of SS3. Imagine I can brand it SS4, and it's an academy, it's a life and business academy for people who have finished school. That's an idea I've thrown out to the world out there. One that catches it, and you will see if we can have over 18,000 private schools registered, that don't have complication in admission, that don't have complication in accommodation, that don't need all those jargons that we talk about. We don't need to get somebody asking for sex before he gives you grade. All the buhaha that we have in university, clean up of university will take place when someone gives them a run for their money. Guess what? Even lecturers, you'll see, just like the way we suffer in the medical practice, a lot of medical doctors that actually are doctors in public institutions have their private practice. You will see lecturers begin to gravitate towards setting up skill institutions, because that's the way to go, and that's the way to clean it up. It is time we cut off Jamb. Marks will not change anything. Marks are just palliatives, as best as they could be. You understand? I think that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. A lot has been said this morning, and one thing that really stands out is the fact that we are the change that we want to see. That's one thing that really stands out for me. If we are not ready to call institutions to face up to their responsibilities, if we are not ready to say, look, for crying out loud, parents and students are paying for these services, and for something that we are paying for, we're still afraid to speak out, then we should not expect to see a change happen. But now, this call out is for us to say, look, there is a need for a change in the system. There is a need to break the monopoly that Jamb has on admission into tertiary institutions, and not just look at it as say, oh well, what we would do if we talk now, they can pick us up. If we talk now, they can do this, they can do that. There can be a clamp now. Somebody needs to begin to lead these conversations, which we have started this morning. And as we just round off, I would ask for 1 minute of your parting shot on the show this morning, and then I'll start with Odishola Olumide.
Thank you, Folu. I think my parting shot this morning will be there should be a sort of a mind revolution. We shouldn't sit back contented with the present situation. I know a lie often repeated appears true, and that has poured a lot of us into a mold that we have almost like the frog on that bouncing burner. The water, the light is being increased gradually, but we perceive it not. And until it gets to a boiling point, only for the frog to die. I think the clarion call this morning is for us to realize that that fire is being increased gradually. Our frog, this is the time to jump out. else we may boil to death. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And your parting shots, Mr. Itayo.
I think the very first thing I'd like to say is if you've not subscribed to my channel on YouTube, go subscribe, share this video, like this video, send it to everyone. This is not a gimmick. There is a need for an awakened consciousness in people. If we all gather as numbers and demand for the right things, people will do better, not because people know better alone, but because people are demanding for better. The knowledge of better doesn't totally change. It's the demand you place on that knowledge. And it's high time that we stop saying these things in the secret. It's high time we speak about it on the rooftop. And the Good Morning Education Show has taken a stand this morning for all to hear. We're saying it in Nigeria, we're saying it in Lagos, we're saying it in West Africa, we're saying it on behalf of Africa to the rest of the world, that it is possible for you to have something great and put it under a bushel. It's time for you to push it out there. We want to begin to cut off representation of Jamb in the education sector, in the education industries, within the education businesses, both in the public domain and in the private domain. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There we have it. Enough said. Let's us all get up and do our part. And part of doing your part is sharing this. One thing that we do not usually leverage on is the power of traction. You don't know how much traction something you share can get. And when it gains traction, it will get to the right quarters. So share, 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 and share again. Thank you very much for being on the show this morning, Mr. Olushola Olumide. Thank you for being on the show this morning, Mr. Rotimi Eitaya. And to our tribe members that have kept the comment going this morning, thank you so much for being with us. Gideon Essien, thank you. Sunday Olabode, Oladokun, Ayobolanle Aino, Buhari Bisola, thank you so much for being with us on the show this morning. And as we end with our usual payoff line this morning, we say have a great day, everyone. And at the count of 2, let's go. 1, 2, go.
It is always a great morning on the Good Morning Education Show. Like this one that is breathing hot fire out in the rain.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Everyone, bye.